Not every banker wears an expensive suit, and not every empire begins in a skyscraper. One of the greatest began behind a fruit stand, the son of Italian immigrants who, at just 7 years old, learned that money could take a life. But in his hands, money would bring hope. He saved a city from ruins. He built bridges where others only saw collapse. And when no one else dared, he financed Walt Disney's impossible dream. The first full-length animated feature, a gamble that changed cinema forever. All of it beginning with a quarrel over a few dollars, a trivial spark that lit a revolution. In today's episode, we dive into the story of Amadeo Giannini, the immigrant's son who built what became known as the People's Bank. A man who believed trust was worth more than gold, and who turned the dreams of ordinary people into the largest bank in America. This is Beneath the Surface Echoes, where every story has a hidden side. Our story begins with a child in San Jose, California. A boy who should have grown up surrounded by fruit crates and sunshine. But at 7 years old, he learned how fragile life really was. His father, Luigi, a hard-working produce merchant, was shot dead in the street, not by gangsters, not by the mafia, but by an angry employee in a dispute over just a few dollars. One moment of rage, one bullet, and a family's world collapsed. Imagine that, being 7, and watching your father's life end because of money. Not fortune, not wealth, just the desperate weight of survival. That day carved a scar into Amadeo Giannini's mind, a fear of chaos, but also a burning need to prove that trust and honesty could outlast violence. And here's the twist. 7 years later, his mother remarried. The new man, Lorenzo Scatena, wasn't just a stepfather. He was a partner, a stabilizing force, and together they ran the family business.
Always look for the best ones, my son.
Yes, Papa.
By the age of 14, he was already standing in the shadow of grown men, negotiating prices, carrying the weight of survival on his shoulders.
We can do better than that.
Say tougher than that.
I'm not sure. We both know it.
But stay with me, because the next decision he made would defy all logic. And yet, it became the foundation of everything that followed. By his early 30s, Amadeo Pietro Giannini, known simply as AP to those around him, had built something solid. After inheriting the family's produce business from his stepfather, the fields were producing, money was flowing in. For most men of his time, that would have been the dream: stability, control, security. But Giannini was never most men. Instead of clinging to what he had, he made a decision that shocked everyone around him. He sold the entire business to his employees. Not for a lump sum, not for power, but on a promise. Pay me back little by little from your wages until the debt is done. Imagine hearing that as a worker in 1902. No contracts, no lawyers, just trust. And the miracle? They did. Payment by payment, the debt vanished. And Giannini walked away not poorer, but freer. He had proven something rare for his time, that trust could be more powerful than profit. Why would he do it? Because for Giannini, trust wasn't weakness, it was currency. And in this experiment, he discovered something powerful, that when people are given dignity, they repay more than money. They repay loyalty, they repay faith. This was his first real gamble on people, and it worked. But what he couldn't know then was that this one act, almost reckless in its simplicity, would become the blueprint for a new kind of banking. But don't leave just yet, because the next time Giannini bet everything on trust, it wouldn't just change his life, it would help rebuild an entire city. After selling his produce business to his employees and retiring at age 31, Giannini joined the board of his father-in-law's savings and loan, but soon resigned, frustrated by the reluctance to serve immigrants and working-class families. Desperate to change the system, he raised $150,000 from his stepfather and 10 friends and opened a new bank. One not for millionaires, but for everyday people, immigrants, small merchants, laborers. He named it the Bank of Italy. Locals began calling him a poor man's banker because he built a bank when others would lock the doors. He offered loans at just 2% interest, roughly half of what other banks charged. He gave small loans, equivalent to nearly $5,000 to $6,000 today, enough for tools, seeds, or a new start. Instead of credit checks, Giannini had one test. He asked to see your hands.
I started with nothing, just these hands. I see your dedication.
Those with calluses, proof of honest labor, were trusted to repay. And they did. His non-performing loan rate was among the lowest in San Francisco. By this simple act, Giannini proved that trust could be more powerful than profit. But just 2 years later, the city would be swallowed in flames, and trust itself would be put to the ultimate test. April 1906. San Francisco shakes itself to the ground. Buildings collapse. Fires rage for days. 3,000 dead, hundreds of thousands without homes, an entire city swallowed by ash, and in the chaos, fear, looting. Banks slammed shut, people with nothing left, no safety, no hope. But legend has it, Giannini found a way. To save his bank, he turned to the very men he once trusted with everything, his former employees. Together they loaded wagons with crates of fruit and vegetables, and hidden under the produce, cash, ledgers, the lifeblood of the Bank of Italy. Disguised as merchants, they rolled salvation through the burning streets in plain sight. 4 days later, while the great banks of San Francisco remained locked, Giannini's was the only one open, not in a marble building, but on a simple wooden plank across 2 barrels. And there, in the smoke and ruin, he began lending money again on nothing more than a handshake or an X on paper. And the miracle? It is said that those same men, the ones who had once been just workers, now carried his trust through the streets. From their wagons of fruit and vegetables, they gave out loans in his name. Maybe it's just a story polished by time, or maybe it really happened that way. But either way, the truth behind it is clear. Trust itself had become the strongest currency. San Francisco rose from the ashes, because when every other vault was sealed, Giannini and his men opened their hands. But here's the thing. Giannini didn't stop at saving a city. Once you've rebuilt the ashes of San Francisco, where do you turn that power next? This was not the end, because what came after the quake was stranger and far more unforgettable.
We thought that love was over, that we were really through.
After the quake, Giannini wasn't just a banker anymore. He had something even rarer, freedom. The freedom to take risks no one else dared. And when he looked at the world, he decided to invest, not in steel, not in railroads, not in oil, but in something almost no banker took seriously, the flickering new industry of cinema. At the time, movies were short reels, sideshow attractions. But a young actor came to him with a dangerous idea, to create a full-length silent film. Too long, too costly, too foolish. Every banker turned him away. Every banker, except Giannini. He gave the money. The cameras rolled. And soon, audiences everywhere were laughing, crying, and lining up for tickets. The film's title? The Kid. And the actor who made it unforgettable was Charlie Chaplin. Giannini wasn't finished. Another dreamer found his support. a young director named Frank Capra. With Giannini's backing, Capra made It's a Wonderful Life. A story of despair and redemption that still brings tears generations later. Think about it. Without Giannini, the world might never have seen Chaplin on the big screen, or Capra's Christmas classic. But Hollywood wasn't his greatest gamble. The boldest bet of all was made not on film, but on steel and fog and the impossible dream of a bridge across the bay. (1930). America is breaking under the weight of the Great Depression. Banks collapse. Families starve. The future feels like it has no foundation. And then, in San Francisco, an audacious plan takes shape. A bridge spanning nearly 2 miles of open water, where the winds are brutal and the fog swallows everything in sight. Most called it impossible, too dangerous, too expensive. Investors stayed away. Even seasoned bankers dismissed it as fantasy. But Giannini saw more than a blueprint. He saw a city that needed hope. He saw men who needed work. And he saw a chance to prove that the impossible could be built. And here's the thing. He didn't just finance the bridge. He lent the money, with 0 interest. And yes, no hidden fees and no fine print. Just a gamble on trust, that when the bridge stood, the city would repay. Because for him, this wasn't just concrete and steel. It was survival. It was identity. It was a promise that San Francisco would not be broken. And what rose from those waters was more than a bridge. It was the Golden Gate. Not just an engineering marvel, but a symbol of what vision and trust can create. But AP's legacy was never just in monuments of steel, because the real bridge he built was between people and a new kind of banking. And that part of the story is even stranger and far closer to the world we live in today. By the early 1930s, Wall Street was in ruins. Speculation had destroyed trust. Banks were closing every week, except one, Giannini's. While others gambled, he kept lending to workers, shopkeepers, small businesses. A true visionary, he believed money had to circulate, like blood through the body, or the system would collapse. Then came a symbolic move. The Bank of Italy became the Bank of America. Not just rebranding, but a statement. This bank belongs to every American. He invested in the future. As he joked, if you have more than $500,000, you need a psychiatrist. Yet he gave over $1 million to Berkeley's agricultural research and Stanford programs. Progress, not charity. Inside his bank, he championed ideas others wouldn't touch. Monthly statements, early electronic records, and a concept that hinted at the future. A card linked to your account, years before plastic credit cards existed. But what happens when the man who built everything on trust hands the keys to those who don't share his vision? In 1945, after decades of forging human and literal bridges, Amadeo Giannini stepped down. He left his desk drawers open. No secrets, no fortune, just a message. I have nothing to hide. 4 years later, he died. His personal wealth, less than $500,000. For the man behind one of the world's biggest banks, that was proof. He built for others.
Street lights glow soft.
But those who followed couldn't keep the same heart. Mergers like Countrywide and Merrill Lynch exposed the bank's vulnerability. These were among the factors that helped trigger the 2008 crisis, when subprime loans and toxic assets brought the financial world to its knees. So here's the question. What becomes of a vision when the visionary is gone? And what does Giannini's legacy matter in a world where banks are bigger than nations and trust feels more fragile than ever? Of course, stories like The Big Short explore how the crisis was built.
No, we just repackage it with a bunch of other shit that didn't sell and put it into a CDO.
A CDO?
Yes, a CDO.
What is that?
How greed and toxic mortgages set the stage for collapse. But the 2008 meltdown has so many layers that each deserves its own episode. If you'd like me to unfold that, leave a comment, because some echoes are too big to ignore. And don't go anywhere, because if you've stayed with me, you've earned a story almost no one knows, a beneath drop hidden inside a fairy tale. And here's the drop. In the 1930s, Hollywood was buzzing with new ideas. But one of them seemed insane. A feature-length animated film, 90 minutes, of drawings. Every studio turned it down. Too expensive, too strange, a guaranteed failure. Every studio, except one banker who'd already built his life on impossible bets. Giannini decided to back the project. And the film he financed? It wasn't just another picture. It became the world's first animated feature. It dazzled audiences, redefined cinema, and built the foundation of an empire of stories. Its name? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Without Amadeo Giannini, the fairy tale that changed entertainment forever might have never existed. Because sometimes, true visionaries don't just invest in numbers, they invest in dreams, and that's what makes them unforgettable. Amadeo Pietro Giannini never wore the crown of a tycoon. He left this world with less than $500,000. But he gave millions the chance to dream, to build, to belong. His true wealth was never in the vaults he guarded, but in the trust he inspired. And that is why, long after the numbers fade, his echo still remains.